In the chat, I add for everyone the speaker score link to the Rob's session. So after Rob's session, you can vote, and so you can tell how much you like his session. And again, please use the chat to type a question, and then at the end of the session, Rob can answer to your question.
I am totally happy for you to interrupt me, Marco, and say, what about this? I'd rather people learn. So yeah, feel free, interrupt me anytime you like. I am always happy.
That's perfect. Okay, it's time. Go, Rob.
It's time. Okay, let's go. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. It's been unbelievable time in the world. I was so looking forward to coming over to Italy so that I could spend some time with my friend Gianluca, and also so I could get to see you and speak in Italy for the first time. My name's Rob. I'm a consultant, I'm an MVP. You can find me at SQL DBA with Beard on Twitter. Today's been amazing. Those of you that follow me on Twitter know that I occasionally, frequently, send a picture of my morning view to Gianluca, and Gianluca then responds with his view, which is way better. So that was first thing this morning. I took my photo, I sent it, and then I traveled 10,371 miles to Brisbane. I stayed here, and I did a presentation, this presentation, for SQL Saturday Brisbane. And now 9,927 miles back to Pordenone, and I can give this presentation to you guys. So technology is amazing. Pass is why we're able to do this. It gives you a lot of free learning opportunities. Please take notice of these. Go and join your local groups, explore the virtual groups. In this time, there are lots of virtual groups, lots of virtual meetings happening. But today, I want to talk about running queries. People with old grey beards will remember that we used to run queries in a black box. Maybe we use this old funny GUI. And for 2.5 decades, we've had the same problem. Here is our problem. Houston, we've had a problem. I'm going to show it, if my clicker will work, I'm going to show it first in PowerShell, because the same problem occurs there. Here's our problem. Management Studio has the same problem. Imagine that this query was one that you'd run at 3 o'clock in the morning because something had broken in your system. And you'd run this query to identify what was happening. And then you'd taken some actions and you'd fixed the system. And then the next morning, when you were having the wash-up meeting, when you're having the discussion about why did this happen? What can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? How can we ensure that we're alerted earlier to avoid this? All of those questions, probably with people with clipboards and want to fill in Excel sheets. One of the other technicians who'd managed to have a full night's sleep says, no, I don't think the answer was 934. I think when you ran that, it would have been 9,000 or something. Are you sure it was 934? Because if it was 934, you should have done something else. And you're going through your notes and you're looking, oh, I've written 934. Let me have a look at the results of the query. I've got Management Studio open and I've got 15 queries. Click my way all the way through these queries, but no, it's gone. Maybe Management Studio crashed and you didn't get your results back. Azure Data Studio, that'll fix it. Brand new, professional, amazing cross-platform system. Nope, still has the same problem. We run our query, we hit this button, then our results are gone. They're just gone. You've got no way of getting these back. And this is the most beneficial reason, I think, for using notebooks. So to, excuse me a minute. There we go. So to create a notebook, we need to have an IDE. And the one we're going to use is going to be Azure Data Studio. Azure Data Studio is a cross-platform environment that works the same pretty much way across Windows and Linux and Mac. It enables you to connect through to your data platform, whatever it may be. Oh, excuse me, there's just going to be a short advert break. Please take notice of your sponsors. Without your sponsors, we wouldn't be able to put on these events. These people enable us to have all of these fabulous free events around the world. And hopefully they're data people. So when you interact with them, please tell them, yes, I saw your advert or I met you at SQL Saturday Pordenone. And then hopefully it goes into their CRM. And then hopefully somebody looks at that. And the next time SQL Saturday Pordenone comes and says, please, can you sponsor our event? They'll go, oh, yes, yeah, absolutely. We definitely will. But back to Azure Data Studio. It's only for Azure. No. So the name Azure basically means that Microsoft marketing think it's cool. It will work with all data platform. It will work with Azure. It does work with big data clusters and managed instances and SQL DW and Azure SQL. But it also works with your on-premise SQL instances. And Microsoft say that it works with all supported versions. But this means the whole thing will work with all supported versions. If you just want to query, it'll still work back to earlier versions of SQL. Rob, come on. It looks just like Visual Studio Code. There's Visual Studio Code and Azure Data Studio. The reason they look the same is because they use the same code base. So Visual Studio Code Insiders version from yesterday is what Azure Data Studio Insiders version uses today. When it comes to the stable versions that are released every month, they're based on the same code base. Why have we got a difference then? I have a jokey answer, and this is just me being silly. But my answer to this question is that data professionals like pretty colors. On a serious note, Azure Data Studio gives an additional level of overlays that enable us as data professionals to create things regarding our data platform. So you can see we've got, in effect, a register servers here, and we've got some color coding about. If we look at our instance, then we would be able to bring up some graphs, some additional color-coded information for us. As well as Visual Studio Code, as well as Azure Data Studio, We also need Jupyter. I don't mean this Jupyter. This Jupyter is a picture of the south pole of Jupiter, the planet. I mean this Jupyter, spelt with a Y. And the name comes originally from the planet. It also references the core languages that they supported with Jupyter in the beginning. But most importantly, it's because Galileo was the first person to discover the moons of Jupiter. And what he did in his publication was include the data and his workings out and the results that he saw. And this enabled other people to take the same data and do their own workings out and make sure that these things were the same. Also enabled people to run repeatedly the same data as he had run. Another advert break. Quickly for our global sponsors. These folk enable PASS to be able to do all of the things that PASS does. So a Jupyter notebook in the beginning was used by these people like Simon and Terry. Simon and Terry are data scientists. They do stuff with data that I don't understand. Andrea was talking about Spark and all of this. I don't know what they do. They do cool things. And this is where notebooks started. They enabled people to run through all of their models and do all of their Spark and R things. I'm just a DBA. Yeah. If we got DBAs here, please read this. Find your own acronym. I think today, yeah. Today is don't be afraid. But shortly it'll be drinking beer all day. It is Saturday. And why do I need a notebook? If notebooks are for all of these magical Spark and data science things, what good are they for me as a DBA? Let's make it simple. I'm a simple fella. A Jupyter notebook is a document that can contain text and code, images, and query results. Fantastic. We can even keep our query results. And I'm going to show you some demos about using notebooks, but I want you to just think, use your imagination and decide ways that you can use this. If you had a document that you could contain text, some code to run, images, and the results of that code, what could you do? What things could you make easy? I'm also going to tell you that as one of the organizers of the PowerShell Conference Europe, I spent yesterday uploading all of the videos that our speakers had recorded to PowerShell.love. And you can go there and find, if you want to, a whole load of PowerShell goodness. So if you're interested in learning more about PowerShell, then this is a good place to start. Perhaps not as a beginner, but it is a good place to start. So I would say that that's probably enough slides, and perhaps we'd be better off with a demo. I'm going to throw that slide up just in case, because sometimes I forget to come back. This is where you give your feedback. And the only thing I ask about the feedback is you give me some why. I don't mind if it's a 0 or a 10. Just please tell me which way so that I can make sure that my presentations get better. Okay. Let's do this. Let's do this. And let's dive into, oh, put it over there. There we go, multiple screens. So what I would like you to start doing when you use Azure Data Studio or Visual Studio Code is to get used to pressing F1. You might need to use Control and Shift and P if you're using code spaces or if you're on a Mac. But F1 will bring up the command palette, and the command palette enables you to find things quickly. Sometimes you can find files, but particularly you can find actions that you want to take in your IDE. So the number one most requested feature for Management Studio is dark mode, please. But dark mode in Management Studio is really difficult technically to achieve. Luckily, typing would be good. There we go. Luckily, in Azure Data Studio, you press F1, you get the command palette, you start typing color. You have to spell it the American way, but you hit enter on color theme and you can change the color of your IDE. And as you can see, it gives you a preview. So if you want dark mode, you can have dark blue, you can have dark, you can have another dark, you can have Kimby dark. It's not Kimball, but it's Kimby. If you're an angry production DBA, perhaps you might have red. But a wise man told me that demos should always be done in a light mode. I normally code in dark mode. So I'm going to keep this in light mode. Another good thing about Azure Data Studio is a control and a plus, and everything gets bigger. Everything gets bigger. So your ability to zoom in and out of what's happening is much, much better. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to create a notebook. Let's make this bit go away. So we're going to press F1 and we're going to do new notebook. Press enter. And now we've got a new notebook coming up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the screen here so that you can see that there is a markdown in SQL Notebook already created. You can find this and all of my presentations and all of my code in my GitHub. So all you need to do is come to github.com, SQL DBA with a beard. And there you'll find my presentations repository. And that, if you went to 2020 and SQL Saturday Pordenone, you'll see that this notebook is already here for you. Here's a cool thing about GitHub. Hopefully, if my internet works, it will actually show you, be able to demonstrate the notebook itself. So there we go. You can see the notebook. You have some things to follow. This is a great way to be able to share things. Because don't forget, a notebook can include your results. If you've run some code, you could create a gist, you could upload your notebook, and maybe you could say, hey, Gianluca, this strange thing with merge replication is happening. Here are my results. This is what I ran and this is what I got. Here is the notebook. And he could have a look and he could see the query and he could see the results and he could work out what was happening. So that's another good way of using notebooks, is using them for incident resolution. Whether that incident resolution is your service desk doing something before you have to, or whether it is your clients providing you with some information about what's gone wrong. If you can actually see the query that they've written because you wrote it and sent it to them, and you can see the results that they got, it will make life much easier. So we've got a notebook. We look at our notebook, we've got some buttons at the top. We've got a code button, a text button. These are going to create code and text blocks. We've got some kernels. So we've got a SQL kernel, so we can run our T-SQL notebooks. And we have a PowerShell kernel for running PowerShell notebooks. And there are some other ones that data scientists use. I'm joking. If you want to use those and you know how to use Spark and R and Python, then those will be the kernels that you would choose. If you have a SQL kernel, then you're going to be able to choose the connection that you wish to run it against. You can click change connection or collect to SQL 2017. And now we could hit this code block. The code block's going to open up like this, and we're going to say slip at 70. And look, we get IntelliSense as well. If we press this button, it's going to run this cell. We could add another one. Select the date. Now we've got the date involved. I would advise that it's a good idea for you to put within your notebook the date that it was run. You can't gather that information from the notebook itself. So if you explicitly put it in, then people can press it and we can run, you know, maybe you want to make it a little bit more better. Put some information about this. Now we've run our notebook and we run the cells in our notebook and we have some of the results. This button is going to clear all of the results. They're all gone. Now, this button is going to run all of the code cells in your notebook at the same time. So we press play, boof, and away they go. This is really, really useful and also can cause you problems. If you write a notebook with 20, 40, 60 sets of code blocks in it, I don't know what the exact number is. This is going to run all of those at the same time. And you will find that at a certain point, it's just going to crash. It just can't handle it. I think it's the Python just can't cope with doing all of this at once, and away it goes. So we've got some code and some results, but realistically, we need some documentation for this. So we're going to add text, and that's going to give us our markdown code block. And that enables us to write markdown in this top box and be able to add, let's see, the live preview of what's running. So we can, write some instructions here. You're going to have a bit of fun because you're going to do this and say, write these on the next line, even with typos. Look. And you'll notice that in our preview, they're on the same line. That's because Markdown loves spaces like YAML does. So we have to press not just one space, but 2 spaces. And then poof, down comes our instructions. If I double click this, this is the view that you would see. So to edit it, we simply double click again. In this notebook that's in the GitHub, we've got how you can work with headers, how you can emphasize your text. If you want to see the markdown behind it, then you double click it, and then you can see what you've got. So we could copy this, and we can paste it over there, and now you can see how you can build up your documentation. If you wanted to add quotes, add quotes. If you want to have lists, we can have lists. If you want to create a numbered list, you can have even more fun. So if we create a numbered list, let's do it over here. Let's do it over here. Thank you. If we create a numbered list, we could do a 1 and a dot and say get espresso. Number 2, check the backups. Number 3, get dressed. And as you can see down at the bottom, we've got a nice number. Oh, hang on a minute. No, that's not right. So thing with ordered lists is, quite often you write something and then you come back and you think, no, I need to put something in better. So probably want to be getting dressed before I check the backups. And you can see my numbered list goes 1, 3, 2, but in here it goes 1, 2, 3. So when your workmates work out that they can double click this and edit the markdown, what you can do for a bit of fun is just put any number you like in here. So, you can just keep changing that, until you get to a big int. But any number you like, as long as it starts with a 1. Well, that mouse doesn't work there, but it doesn't. We could change it to 2, change it to 130, whatever that first number is, everything is going to follow on below. It's a bit of fun, but also just a way of showing you can write your lists for your documentation, do this, and then do this, and then do this. You can add links. You can add a simple link like this. You can also use HTML links. Provide links to your blog post, to the Stack Overflow question that answers this particular notebook problem. Maybe it's going to be to your internal documentation. You can add images. Now, images can end up a little bit funny in some ways. So here is my little trick. I'm just going to check this because I'm completely curious. I haven't checked this for a while. I'm just going to put this in here. Oof. So 1150. Okay. So this particular image was created probably 7 months ago. And the method that I used to create it is described in here. I just went to a GitHub repository. I opened an issue. In the issue, I pasted my image and I got the uploading image and some markdown. If you copy this markdown out of here, paste it into your notebook, ta-da, it appears and it stays for months. I don't know what their caching is. Now, obviously, this is not a recommended or officially authorized method of storing your images, but it's a good way of doing it. You can choose other ones. You can show what you looked like 27 years ago. You can show pictures of your favorite Italian man in -10 in Vienna and a weird English fella who doesn't feel the cold. You can add code to your markdown. So you just need to use a backtick. Add a backtick and you can just put your code in. If you want to use 4 backticks, you can end up with some formatting. Now, if we look at the markdown behind this, you can see that we've formatted that one for SQL and that one for PowerShell. And actually, even here, I can't see any difference. I can't see any formatting. In some of the color themes, you can actually see a little bit different, but it's not brilliant. You can add gifs. So you could find a gif, something like this, and just put in an image with the exclamation mark and some square brackets, or you could use the the HTML code. You put in images, put in as many silly images as you like, and best of all, you search for windmills, you get one of these two. This is when I did the presentation in Holland. It just made me chuckle. We got both of my favorite windmills. Come on, Rob, you're just being silly. Why am I going to put silly gifs of windmills in? Okay, fair point. It's good for presentations. Hopefully gives you a smile. We can have a laugh. But also, what about screenshots? What about if you have a screencast? Lots of screen capturing software will allow you to turn the results into a GIF, which you could then paste into your documentation, your notebook, and show what should happen or what shouldn't happen or what to do when. These are all things that you can do. Okay, we've talked about notebooks and the fact that they save the results. Prove it. Okay, so we've got this 10.06.05.573. And we're going to save this notebook. Let's save it in the temp. And we'll call it Pordenone. Okay, so now we can close this notebook. In fact, I'm going to close the entire Data Studio. It's gone. If this was Management Studio, if this was SQL CMD, if it was any of the other IDEs that we're using, your results, they're gone for good. They're nowhere to be seen. But what we can do is we can do, let's have a look at the file itself. So it was C temp Pordenone. And lo and behold, turns out that a notebook is just JSON. There's nothing more exciting about it than that. So you can see where we put our headlines and our emphasis. You can see the code that we wrote, select get date. You see we had one row, how long it took to run, and the result. So we have a column that was named the date, and here we go, 10.06.05.573. So this is really important to realize, because if your queries return 2 gigabytes of data, your JSON is going to be 2 gigabytes and more in size. Azure Data Studio is going to struggle with things that are that big. The other thing to say is that because this is just JSON and just a flat file, it works really, really well in source control. So we could pick up, just wondering if this is going to work here. Let's see what we get. You could pick up a notebook. There we go. And you can ask Azure Data Studio to show the differences in what happened. So I'm using the GitLens extension in Visual Studio Code, and that enables me to see the file that was changed and show me the differences. It'll show me where I've added a different picture there, and it's going to show that I changed it to add some new gifs here. So it's really easy to see what's changed. But let's come back and look at our JSON of our T-SQL notebook. You can see that we've got our column name here in our fields. And if we had multiple column names, that would just be an array of column names. And then we've got our data here. So each row is going to come out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 5 columns, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 5 columns, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 5 columns, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 5 columns. And this means that your JSON is going to get very deep, very long. And when you do that comparison, it's going to be far more difficult to see the difference in the results on T-SQL. It's possible, but it's more challenging, just so that you're aware. But anyway, let's open up Azure Data Studio again. And we will file open as Pordenone, just so that you can see, here we go. We do still have the results. So if this was my 3 o'clock in the morning notebook that I'd use to evaluate what was wrong with the instance and how I could improve it, how I could fix the problem, I've got all of my results here. I can attach them to my incident management system. I can display them during a wash-up meeting. I can say to the bloke who'd had all sleep all night who said, no, it should have been 9,433, and go, well, nope, it wasn't. Here are my results. So this is a fantastic way of using a notebook. We can use it to gather information about things in an incident. We could use it to provide a run book. Do this, and then do this, and then do this. Super ways of doing things with notebooks. What else could we do with notebooks? Let's have a look at this. In my, that one can go away now. In my Jupyter Notebooks repository, we've got some not.NET notebooks, and there are quite a few of them here. So some of them are going to be things to do with forwarded records and heaps, or permissions, or some queries, a place to store my things. But maybe we want to look at agent jobs. So I can never decide which one to do. Let's do this one. Every time I do this presentation, I pick a different notebook. Let's check a PowerShell notebook. So it takes a minute for me to pause because we're waiting for the kernel to come up. And that means that the integrated console comes up. And that means that Microsoft helpfully told me that the new version of PowerShell is available. So I'm going to say no, thank you for now, and close this. And what I've got here is a PowerShell kernel notebook. This always attaches to localhost. I wonder if that might change, but at the moment it's only attaching to localhost. And we've got an additional button over here that says Manage Packages. And that's because our PowerShell runs inside a Python package. And that means if we do an F1 and a new notebook, and we create a PowerShell notebook, then on this Windows machine, if I look at, oh, look, I get IntelliSense within my notebook. For PowerShell, get the same for SQL as well. Let's look at the version of PowerShell that I'm using. So on my Windows machine, I'm using PowerShell version 5.1, and you can see we're on a desktop. Let's jump over to an Ubuntu machine. Remember, Azure Data Studio is completely cross-platform. Can Rob type his password and talk at the same time? Yes, he can. Look at this. So we're in Azure Data Studio in Ubuntu, and we've run PS version table again. And this time, hang on a minute, we're in a different PowerShell version. We're in PowerShell version 7, and it depends which package you've got. The early versions were 6.2.3, I think. But you can see we're running on Linux. This is a Unix platform. So your PowerShell notebooks, if they're going to be run cross-platform, just consider the fact that these are going to be slightly different versions of PowerShell. In the main, it's going to work okay, but every now and again, something might just bite you. So we'll put the Ubuntu away, and we'll come back to our Windows machine. And we're going to say, well, how about if we wanted to know how long our agent jobs ran? And maybe we've got an ETL process, and we need to know whether our loading is happening, and then whether we need to stage the data, and then maybe whether we perform the data. What's going on here? Have we got everything in line? If they all end up overlapping, perhaps things don't work properly. So we've got a set of instructions for something that is common to do. So this notebook will create and open an HTML page showing the runtimes of the agent jobs on the instance for a 24-hour period. It'll be saved in CTemp. There's a little bit of addition I put in when Kendra was moderating. So this requires the DBA tools and the CTemp folder. run this cell to check the prerequisites. So what we've got is some instructions that tell me what it is to do. Well, we have the PowerShell module. And you can see here that all you can see is this comment block. But actually, there's a whole load of code under here. So I can hide all of the clever code that I write and just leave a comment at the top. You could do this in T-SQL, you can do this in PowerShell. I would say if you do this, to make the comment in the first block, say, press this button over here, or just click the play button to run this, or something related to give people instructions. Unfortunately, if we look at this code, I want to give people the option to put in two pieces of information, either the instance or number of instances that they need to check, and how many days behind. If we were doing this on Monday and we wanted to see what happened on Saturday, we wouldn't want to have just 1 day behind. And the problem is that if I collapse this cell, this is how you collapse the cell, then you only see the first one. You can't do a collapse and show me 2 lines. This collapse and expand stays for the lifetime of that notebook until it's changed. So that's something that's saved because it just happens in the JSON. So we're going to check SQL 2017 N5. I have no idea what this is going to happen, but we'll see what happens. And we're going to press play. And this is going to use a DBA tools command called convert to DBA timeline. And what that does is it takes the results of get DBA agent job history and turns them into an HTML page. Boom. This is so useful. Doesn't really show it here because I've got no really long running jobs. But you can see that the job itself is called the name of the instance, the day, and the date, because that was important for the thing that we were doing at the time. And at the top it says this is the timeline for this instance. And we can see each of the jobs, and we can see how often they ran, if they failed, and also how long they took. You see this one took 18 minutes between 1 AM for some reason, because the time before it took 36 seconds. So you can identify things that are happening this way. But the reason that we were using it was, if you can imagine, I don't think I can actually draw a block on there. If you can imagine that this green, each of these is one long job running, we could see that actually some of our jobs were overrunning in time for each other, that the documentation said were chained together, so they followed each other. And they were competing with resources and making each other take longer and making the job to work. And it was an ever increasing problem that we were able to resolve. But we fixed that, and we gave the junior DBAs and the service desk and other interested people the capability to just run this notebook and create an HTML page that they could use. Fantastic. Yeah, we can save that. How about, let's pick audit. So another problem that we had was we needed to understand who had which permissions. And this client had a lot of regulatory requirements, and they needed to understand quickly, or sorry, business members needed to understand quickly what the permissions were on a particular instance. And to save having to do this again and again and again, we created a notebook. And the notebook, you'll see occasionally I get a funny output there. If you run it again, it'll come back. This notebook's going to create an Excel directory. And I'm going to press go because it takes a couple of minutes, well, a couple of seconds to run. And what we did is we enabled actually a couple of expert business users to run this notebook. So now whenever the question came to the business, who has permission to these databases, they who had the question, instead of having to go and open a ticket and then phone the DBA because people open a ticket and then get on the phone, can you do my ticket please? Well, hang on, I'm in a queue. You're in a queue. Let's just wait. I know this is really important. Okay, I'll stop what I'm doing and sort this out. They could just run this notebook themselves. And lo and behold, what we've got is an Excel sheet dynamically created with color coding and instructions. And it shows the permissions on an instance. Oh, every time, don't press Control and minus there. The granular permissions, I color coded it by database, by sysadmin, by DB owner, so we could see what was going on. And you see, we've got all of these permissions on this one instance. And it took, I don't even know, it took 10, 15 seconds to do. I didn't even have to think about it. We could just get it sorted, pass this over to people.
Rob, 10 minutes.
Yes. 10 minutes. Excellent. Oh, I thought there was a question. I was all excited.
Again, everyone is invited to write a question to Rob in the chat so he can answer at the end of the session.
Please do. 10 minutes. Hokey cokey. So 10 minutes. I am going to say, feel free to go and have a look in this repository and play with some of the things that are here. But what I want to show you now is different. I'm going to show you, let's take this back over here, .NET Interactive Notebook. And the reason I've done this is because this is how you're going to work out how to do the installation. We'll do a search. The first result, .NET Interactive, is here. And this is a blog post from Maria talking about .NET Interactive Notebooks and giving you a set of instructions. It's a little bit, take you 10 minutes or so. But once you followed those instructions, what you can do is use Windows Terminal, which opens on a different monitor. There we go. And you don't have to use Windows Terminal, but the reason I do this is because I'm going to show you that my local PS version table on my laptop is version 7.1. Windows Terminal enables you to open up any sort of shell that you want to, really. So we've got CMD, I've got Windows PowerShell, I've got WSL, I've got PowerShell version 6, I've got PowerShell version 7, I've got preview versions because I like to play with things. But we're going to open the Anaconda, which you'd have followed the instructions would be a Python installation. And then what we do is we need to navigate to the place where we have our notebooks, because otherwise it opens in C Windows. Rob quickly forgets what path he's supposed to be going to. Let's try this one. Let's try that one. There we go. So this is my Jupyter Notebooks repo. This is in GitHub. You are going to be able to do exactly the same. And then we type Jupyter space lab. And what happens is it fizzes for a minute. Docker is running, good. And then it opens up a browser. You see we've done some Python, it's done a browser. And when we open the browser, you're going to get a spinning wheel. And the spinning wheel is going to come up like this. I'm actually going to close this. And what we've got here is Jupyter running. Jupyter is going to enable us to run .NET PowerShell, so PowerShell Core, PowerShell 7, and F# and C# and Python, and also these other languages that data scientists use. And you can also have a console as well. And if we just run a .NET console, let's take a look down the bottom here in the browser. You can see when we start to do PS, version table, press tab, you can see it says busy, and then it gives me the completion. And if I run, don't press enter, press shift and enter, and then we're going to be able to run the code. This is just a console, this is not a notebook, but it's to show you that the PowerShell version here is version 7.0.0. Remember, on my local machine, I've got 7.0.1, the latest version. So this is using a different exe from your local machine. And most of the time, that's not a problem. Initially, there were some local modules that weren't, that you expected to be with PowerShell, but that weren't. This is a very cut down version of PowerShell, but you can still bring all of your modules and anything in from the PowerShell gallery and build up what you need, just to be aware. So why have I done this? I've done this because I love this particular thing. I think this is really useful. We like to show the things that we build, the things that we make, and to be able to have a solution that we can pass to other people and they can use is really useful. So we've got a DBA tools folder in this repository, and it's got a load of instructions in it. And the first thing it's going to say is you can run this code, shift and enter. And that's going to create a custom Docker compose and some credential work. And then we're going to do a, we're not going to do Docker pull because we don't need to, but we're going to do a Docker compose up. This is going to create 2 SQL 2019 containers that I've added some of the worldwide, no, not worldwide importers, pubs, Northwind, etc. into, and some users. We're going to create this, but this notebook has the information that you need to be able to do it. If we check our connection, we're going to see we're creating a connection. It's probably just still waiting for it to spin up. There we go, we've got a connection, so everything's okay. We could look at our logs. And again, it's a notebook, it's saved. We've got all of our results saved. There is our machine. That's when it started. And this means that we could do something like this. Here is an introduction to DBA tools. Here's another great thing. If my Docker had not come up, if the containers weren't ready, I could have carried on because I've got the results of the last time that I ran it. These are all included within this notebook. They're all there and ready. I just want to show you backup and restore in DBA tools because it's cool and it shows you how easy it is to work with a notebook and with DBA tools. So if we look down at the...
Rob, a couple of minutes, as you also have a couple of questions, so you can answer that.
Excellent. Right, let's have a look at the last time these databases were backed up. This morning for Brisbane. And let's do a backup. And in a PowerShell, in a .NET Interactive notebook, we can get some colorized output. So you can see there that we're getting our colorized progress bar. And that really was the main thing that I wanted to show you for .NET Interactive. Okay, fire me with some questions.
Okay, I read you a couple of questions. So from Elisa, is Azure Data Studio good for connecting and querying PostgreSQL?
Oh, now, as far as I understand it, not being a Postgres person, it is totally capable of connecting to Postgres. If you go to the extensions, there is a Postgres extension for Azure Data Studio, and you would click install and then install it. It enables you to connect to Postgres anywhere. So there you go. You need to install an extension.
Okay, and there is a question from Maxime. Is it possible to store query output in the notebook?
Hopefully I've answered that. That is the number one best thing about notebooks. So when we looked, let's show you here. When we looked at the content of our notebook, this was the notebook that we created. There are results as in the JSON. And if we reopen this F1 and open notebook, and we'll open Pordenone, which is the one we did earlier. And here we have the date and the time that we had it and the server name that we use. So this is the notebook that we created during the demo. And here are the results. So the query results are always available with your notebook if you save it.
Okay, and there is another question from Elisa. Are these notebooks used for the demo available in GitHub or somewhere else?
Apart from this one that we've created live, everything that you have seen, everything that I do, if you go to github.com/SQLDBA with a beard, you'll be presented with this page, and you have presentations here. And in the presentations, we have 2020 is where we are, Pordenone. There is the PowerPoint that you've seen. It's also on the SQL Saturday site. Here is the Markdown notebook. You explore some of these other ones, there are other notebooks there. The Jupyter notebooks are available here in the Jupyter Notebooks repository. You've got not.NET, those were the original T-SQL with the agents, jobs, with the permissions and a whole load of other things in there. And then you have the .NET ones. These are the ones that you need to run in .NET Interactive in the Jupyter lab like this. And these have got DBA tools and some stuff about DBA checks.
Okay, there is another question from Cesare. Can I disable execution when sharing the notebook?
Nope. Not, well, I mean, the way that you would do that would be to not give them permissions on the instance. That's the only way you're going to do it. The notebook itself is not possible to remove the run buttons. I think that is an issue that has been raised, a request on GitHub for Azure Data Studio. Of course, one way you could do it is to share the notebook through GitHub, so that it just has the results in it and nothing to execute. If you're sharing it and they're opening it in Azure Data Studio, they're going to be able to run it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I see that there are no any other answer. So I say I remember to everyone to go to the speaker score, to the link in the chat, and you can evaluate the great session from Rob. And now so I say thank you, Rob. Thank you having you here in Pordenone.
Oh, I so wish I was there in Pordenone. I so wish. And grazie. I don't know any Italian, but grazie.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye, Rob. Bye. Ok, switch to the Italian. Ok, adesso Lorenzo.